Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Please note that the opinions voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network nor our sponsors. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Welcome to Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Born paranormal historian and ufologist Kevin Malek and psychic demonologist Jennifer Malek, as they navigate us through the different categories of the unknown and the unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, cryptids and monsters, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, metaphysics, forbidden archaeology, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, crimes, and corruption, with top analysis from the experts of these disciplines. If it's amazing, unusual, or mysterious, if it's bizarre, creepy, and fantastic, if it's unbelievable, paranormal, or supernatural, it's here on Paraversal Universe. Here are your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, welcome to Paraversal Universe, brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited at the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center here in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek.
Hey, everybody.
Paraversal Universe is produced by Kat Hobson, the voice of Fate Magazine Radio over at WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We also heard on WCET 101.7 FM out of Columbia, South Carolina, High Point Radio 100.5 FM and 1620 AM out of New Jersey, and the Rift Radio Network family out of Lakeside, Virginia. Welcome one and all, and hello to everybody in the chat room. We look forward to your questions and comments as always. The archives for the show will be available as well. Show archives from over the years can be found in various places on the web, including our archives like page on Facebook called Paraversal Universe Show Archives. Also check out our guest promo page, Paraversal Universe Radio, for what's upcoming in the near future. We hope everyone's doing well, as always. Today we're going to talk with Max Hawthorne. But first, as always, let's do our shout-outs. Shout-outs go to those people who shared our show banners last week. We appreciate it greatly and thank you kindly. So who do we have?
This week we have Walt Christos, Thoughts of Christos, Katrina Cooper, Rhodey Speak, Dennis Koch, Jason Bland, Paranormal Soup, Jamie Demelos, JJ Paranormal, Metaphysical Bounce, Howie Odell from the Orion Effect, Kat Hobson at WBHM, Lawrence DeMisa, Jean Broida, Lisa Reynaga, The Rift, Sudan, Lori Kreslaw, Elaine Dawes, Trish Freudel, and Jess Terrell.
And hello to everybody in chat. It's good to see a bunch of people in chat. Alrighty, our guest for this broadcast is from the Philly area, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. He is a best-selling author and a well-known aquatic mysteries researcher. His name is Max Hawthorne. He hosts the show Max Hawthorne's Marine Mysteries and is the author of the blockbuster Kronos Rising book series. I don't have his bio handy, so let's just bring him out and find out together. Max, are you with us?
I am here, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Paraversal Universe.
It is an honor and a privilege, and I got a haircut just for the occasion.
Well, we always start off by asking our first-time guests to tell us how they got in their respective fields of expertise. Perhaps you can relay some of that bio in there somewhere as well, if possible. We have plenty of time, so take your time. How did you get into this?
Into doing research on marine mysteries per se, or
Yes.
as a novelist, or both?
Well, how about whatever came first? I mean,
I think it goes hand in hand. I mean, historically speaking, like my father is what people would call a rock hound. He was always collecting mineral samples and a lot of fossils. So when I was a child, I grew up seeing a lot of things like mammoth bones sitting on top of the piano and megalodon teeth and dinosaur fossils and things of that nature. So that kind of, was instilled at an early age, I guess you'd say. I also started fishing when I was 5 years old, which started festering a love for the water and eventually all things marine. And as I eventually got older and became a novelist, my passion was writing books about extinct marine animals being alive in the present and the complications that would come with that. And when you do a lot of research for your books, you tend to also end up coming across a lot of things in related fields, including cryptozoology. So research about, let's say, for example, there's an enormous pair of octopi in my current novels based on the Octopus giganteus original theory. So these kraken, I had to do a lot of research on them. So you start reading about encounters between ships and such creatures and whales and such creatures, et cetera. So it all kind of went hand in hand, I guess you'd say.
that's really cool. Usually we focus on nonfiction. In your case, even though Kronos Rising is fiction, it has inspired people to get into paleontology and marine biology and the aquatic cryptozoology. And your book is based on scientific record concerning paleontology and zoology. Is that correct?
Yeah, but there is actually some cryptozoological references. For example, I think it's the U-571. I could be wrong with the U-boat incident, but from 1918, where a German U-boat torpedoed a British steamer. I think it was called the Iberian. And when the Iberian sank, it must have been carrying munitions, and it exploded underwater. Besides all the debris, the captain and the members of his crew saw an enormous marine reptile thrown up into the air. And so that was that's actually mentioned in the first Kronos Rising book as a possibility that the animal that's in the book might still be out there somewhere. So I try and do a combination based on historical sightings, extinct, up-to-date research, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's a series, right? And there are 5 books in the series, correct? Am I right?
Yes, soon to be 6.
Soon to be 6, okay. So and each book, when I was looking at them, has a different creature, I guess. Or at least on the cover, it shows like the first one was
a pliosaur.
Thank you. And then you had the octopi, like you said, on one of them, and then there was a shark. Can you walk us through these and describe maybe a little bit about each book?
Sure. The first novel, Kronos Rising, came out in 2014. That was actually my first novel, period. And it was centered around the idea of what would happen in today's, world if an enormous marine predator from the time of the dinosaurs turned out to not be as extinct as everyone thought, and what would happen if it was set free and possibly able to even multiply into today's predator-depleted oceans. And when I say, predator-depleted, many whales have been pushed to the brink of extinction. Sharks are being killed for their fins. So if you take an animal like that and you put it into a almost predator-free environment, or it doesn't have any competitors or anything like that, it's basically the apex predator automatically. There's nothing to hold it in check. So the idea behind the first book was you had this, off the coast of Cuba, there was a caldera, a Cretaceous era caldera, where during the KT impact, when the asteroid struck that wiped out the dinosaurs at the Yucatan Peninsula, it created, among other side effects, an enormous tidal wave, 1,000 or so meters high, and this caldera was swamped by this wave. When it did that and receded, the caldera was basically turned into an enormous saltwater aquarium. And although many creatures were killed on the impact with the wave, there was a lot of animals still left inside of that, in that saltwater aquarium. And they were imprisoned there, obviously, until the present day. So you had pliosaurs, you had the huge fish and primeval squid that they fed upon, and a host of other animals, a whole ecosystem, basically. And that was great to set the stage for me, because it let me create a background story, let's say a backstory, where it was very plausible. You know, you have a caldera with geothermal heating, so even the ice ages wouldn't have really been able to affect what was inside of it. It's like a heated aquarium. And then you have all these animals in there. You split open that caldera, even temporarily, and a lot of these things escape into the sea. They're going to do what they do. They're going to eat, they're going to mate, they're going to multiply, they're going to try and survive. So then we have this pliosaur, this almost blue whale-sized monstrous reptile that was suddenly set free, and it has these instincts that go all the way back to the Cretaceous, and it's swimming along expecting the coastline of, let's say, North America to be like it was 65 plus million years ago, and it's not. So now it does what any other apex predator would do. It starts to set up shop, and it wants to establish a territory for itself. It starts to feed on whales. It starts to feed on people, comes into conflict with the hero and heroine of the story, and obviously things go from there. I don't want to spoil the ending, but at the end of the book, that set the stage for what was going to happen in the next book. The next book is Kronos Rising Kraken, Volume 1, and that takes place actually 30 years later. So it was neat because it gave me the opportunity to write in the year 2045. So I could make changes in technology, and it was interesting because I had to change the ecology of the oceans, because now these things were everywhere. They had multiplied to the point that all of a sudden when people started realizing they were there, they were in such huge numbers, they were an enormous threat. Boats were being taken down left and right. The fishing industries were annihilated. Fishing stocks crashed. It affected the economy of the world. I created a thing called a Coastal Defense Force, where they use these anti-biologic submarines to try and hunt down and kill these creatures whenever they become a threat. There was even kind of like a heart to today's stuff, where there was a reality TV show called Pliosaur Wars. And in this futuristic story, there's an aircraft carrier, and the fighter pilots on it have a reality show where they go out and they try and kill these things each week and compete who gets the most of them, etc. Even a breakfast cereal for kids called Kronosaurus Crunchies. And they're little tiny people with gooey red centers, and they scream when you crunch them. It was the advertisement.
That's so cool.
It says that they scream when you crunch them. So the kid's like a little Kronosaurus eating people and stuff.
I see,
so,
right?
I got to create this whole fantastical world, which is quite plausible, though, if you think about it, with these creatures running amok and humanity trying to retain or regain control of the oceans of the world while all this is going on. So that was kind of like the starting point of the second novel, but adding into the mix, as the term Kraken indicates, I also brought into it a species of enormous octopus that lives in the very deepest of the ocean abysses. And these kraken rarely come to the surface, but based on cryptozoological sightings, which were referenced in the book, occasionally. But now what's happened is whales, because of so many pliosaurs, are being hunted and wiped out. The whales have changed their migratory routes. They're spending a lot more time in colder waters to escape these huge reptiles. And these kraken are starving. They don't have any food. So now they're coming up to the surface to search for something to eat. And they, at one point, they come across a big schooner that they mistake for a large baleen whale. In fact, the schooner's name is the Rorqual, which is cool if you think about it. And they attack this sailing ship thinking it's a whale. They find out it's not, but then they discover, there are crunchy things on board with gooey red centers, just like the cereal. So now they learn to start hunting ships, and they're attacking large boats and plucking people off them, etc. And that sets the stage now. Is there going to be a conflict between these marine reptiles and these octopuses and the people and these submarines and so forth and so on. After Kraken 1 came out, I had to take a breather because these were enormous books. I mean, they're like almost 200,000 words apiece.
Oh, wow.
And I think I must be like Stephen King. I have so much information. I just, want to keep, breathing life into these things. And I mean, I guess when you try and create visuals that are so realistic for people, I find a lot of authors, actually I blame the publishers, to be honest. They want to do minimum page counts to maximize profits. And being with a little indie house, my goal is to give the people the most bang for their buck. So I don't, cheapen when it comes to details and stories and backgrounds and things like that. Everything is like you're there. Like they say, oh, the reader will imagine that, But sometimes people don't want to have to use their imagination all the time. Like, is it better to say Jake crossed the dock, or to describe it as saying, Jake's, heavy work boots thudded across the worn dock boards as he stormed across the dock? One creates a visual. One is like, oh, he's there. He went from A to B. So anyway, but point is this. So after Kraken 1, I put out 2 novelettes that came out after that. One was Kronos Rising Diablo, which was incredibly well received. It wasn't a huge book. I think it was only like maybe, I'm going to say, 50 pages long, like a novelette. But it was the background story of what happened in Diablo Caldera, the caldera off the coast of Cuba, and what happened before the book opened and what happened during the eruption that set these creatures free. And that was a great story because it was almost like a marine version of Skull Island. There were Cro-Magnons that had been living on the island for 20,000 years and worshiping these creatures as gods and sacrificing their dead to them. And, they dealt with the whole ecosystem there and their society and such. And then you had this eruption that freed, obviously, the sole surviving pliosaur and also wiped out that population. I guess I just gave a big spoiler there. But anyway, everybody wanted to know what happened in Diablo Caldera, how this thing escaped, what happened, how it came about. So, that book did stupendously well for such a small book. I was really, warmed the cockles of my heart, I guess you'd say, to see people so enthusiastic about it. But right. After that, I put out another novelette called Kronos Rising Plague. And what has been happening, and this was covered in Kraken 1, is that one of the problems with having an extinct marine predator from 65, 66 million years ago on the loose is you also deal with the possibility of prehistoric bacteria.
Yep.
And so these animals, their saliva contains lethal pathogens that go back to the time of the dinosaurs. And in particular, we touched on the fact that they were especially dangerous to mammals, kind of hinted at the possibility that one reason that mammals couldn't move up on the food chain until the non-avian dinosaurs were extinct was the possibility that a lot of dinosaurs had this bacteria that affected mammals in particular, festered inside their bodies because of the temperatures, et cetera, and wiped out large populations of mammals. So I have this Cretaceous cancer, as it's called, being a problem in Kraken 1 and the government trying to deal with it. You have, let's say, in the Philippines or Japan, somebody catches a tuna that has a bite on it. It escaped a pliosaur, a near miss. They eat this tuna, especially with sushi. Next thing you know, you've got a whole village comes down with this problem.
Right.
And the side effects of Cretaceous cancer is almost like turning somebody into a flesh-eating zombie, except they're not dead. It's like rabies on steroids and then some, highly contagious. So Plague actually touched on events like days before Kronos Rising Book 1, where a girl on an ocean liner, her boyfriend, was taken off the railings by this pliosaur, the original pliosaur, and she ended up with a face full of saliva and blood. And she was the initial carrier of Cretaceous cancer in Florida, in the U.S. And so it covers what happened with her and who she infected, et cetera, and also covers things going on after Book 1, the fallout after the survivors dealt with this monster on its rampage. After that, we got into Kraken Volume 2, which picked up where Kraken 1 left off, and that was the whole rip-roaring adventure, which was very well received. And we brought into it, there was an enormous megalodon shark named Ursula that the researchers were calling her, that had been tagging her and following her around. It had this gigantic pliosaur on the loose called the Ancient that was being hunted, a whole big thing going on, and all this cast of characters and monsters all closing on the original research facility Tartarus that is in Kraken 1. And I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Why don't we continue this conversation after these commercials? You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We'll be right back with our guests for the next segment.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back from our first commercial break, everyone. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting, also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek, and we'd like to take a minute and thank everybody who makes Paraversal Universe possible, including graphic art director Lawrence D. Meza, music theme by Matt Stenz, announcer Frank Lee, producer and owner at WBHM Kat Hobson, also to Howie Odell and Lisa Renaga and the Rift family, and to Michael Vera at WCET-FM. Thank you all for carrying our content and working together on our behalf and the behalf of our audience everywhere. And, of course, a huge thank you to God in heaven, whose strength beyond strength is stronger than all, for granting us this wonderful show and opportunity here to be with you all.
Amen.
An appreciation to all the various platforms we are on, including iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Twitch, YouTube, Daily Motion, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Blog Talk, Podbean, Google Play, Mixcloud, and Paranormal Radio Livestream app, which is streamed and restreamed from various other outlets all over the world via the internet. This segment of Paraversal Universe is brought to you by the UFO Wisconsin Research Team, Wisconsin's alternative to MUFON. And back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are talking to paleo author and aquatic mysteries researcher Max Hawthorne, author of Kronos Rising. Are you still with us, Max?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. We had to abruptly cut you off for the commercial.
Even though we didn't want to.
Right. So if you can remember where you left off, you can continue with your assessment.
Oh, sure. I was just touching on the latest book in the series, going through them, and that was Kronos Rising, Kraken Volume 2. It basically picked up where Kraken 1 left off, and at this point, there's a multi-pronged adventure going on. The cast of characters in the book who are related to the characters from the first novel 30 years earlier are operating out of this research base called Tartarus, without giving a lot of spoilers, but one of the main characters is a submarine commander whose submarine, the Griffin, has been assigned to hunt down and kill this macropliosaur named Typhon. That's one plot line that's running. At the same time, a woman named Natalia Dragonova, who commands another submarine, has been sent to go to that caldera that we were discussing earlier, where this pliosaur and these other marine creatures in the Cretaceous first escaped from. She's going there with a crew to actually explore the caldera and find out what, if anything, remains there. And of course, when you create a situation like that, obviously it's kind of like neither of them has any idea what's heading their way type thing. And while all that's going on, though, the main character, Dirk Braddock, who's at Tartarus, the research facility, is also investigating things that have to deal with the loss of somebody very close to him, et cetera. And he uncovers things going on, let's say, that maybe he shouldn't have, and everything just sort of spirals into a big, horrific series of disasters where everybody is fighting to stay alive. And the Kraken, of course, is on its way. The book kind of leaves off, I would say, with a cliffhanger. Well, actually it does. It leaves off with the ultimate cliffhanger, to be honest, which I can't touch on at all. But sure, it picks up right from there in Kraken Volume 3, which will be released shortly.
And that's a new one that's coming out soon, right?
Yes. And that will finally answer all the questions, because I can't go on social media without getting asked, when is the next book coming out? When is the next book coming out? Is there a release date yet? I feel like George R.R. Martin, except without all his money.
So do people ask you any plans for a movie?
Well, I would love to be able to plan a movie, but that's not up to me. That's up to the media guys out there in Hollywood. I think if the right person looks at the books, they're going to see that the characters, the set pieces, the plot lines, etc. I mean, these books would make a fantastic series out there. I mean, I think it could rival Jurassic World, to be honest. More like Jurassic World on the water type thing.
Right.
Which people, a lot of people find the sea obviously frightening, intriguing. It's very mysterious and obviously practically limitless. You never know what's out there.
Some people believe, in fact, I think it's a fact now, that there's a second ocean somewhere inside the Earth. Whether it's just directly under this ocean or whether it's deeper inside. I know Hollow Earth theory suggests there is an ocean in the Earth, and I know there are maps that show water pouring into the poles, and so do the missing books of the Bible. They touch on that too. What are your thoughts on that? Did that inspire? Because when you talked about the caldera, I thought it was really interesting, and the idea that they were isolated. And then they came out.
Well, a lot can happen in 65 million years, but I think it was Jules Verne that actually wrote about that, if I'm not mistaken, at the Earth's core and that type of thing. But, I mean, I haven't read all of the scientific literature that's been out about this. I mean, a lot of it is, I think, more theoretical, but I'm not sure if it's full oceans or if it's water contained, in sediment or such. So I really don't, I couldn't really comment on it. It wouldn't surprise me that there's a tremendous amount of water there. I mean, that would serve a lot of purposes besides explaining where our oceans come from, but it might actually serve to regulate the planet's temperatures if you think about it. I mean, if the core of the Earth is molten rock, it's pretty hot stuff. I mean, that would actually act as a damper to kind of reduce temperatures emanating through the crust. So, but anything could be down there.
Right. We are a water world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people say it should be named water instead of Earth.
Right. How about thoughts on you had mentioned Poseidon, or I'm sorry, not Poseidon, Kraken, but Poseidon and Leviathan and demigods of the ocean. Because you were talking that you had looked into some of the older sea legends, and I find a lot of that stuff compelling, actually.
Well, I like to draw on mythology and also cryptozoological sightings, different aspects of these things to, spice up things for my readers. For example, there's an enormous marine reptile, the biggest of all the pliosaurs, a female named Tiamat, that is a captive in that research facility I told you about, and she's sort of like a mutation. And Tiamat is like a Babylonian goddess, like a sea dragon, a goddess of elemental force and chaos, that type of things. So it was an appropriate name for her. I draw on a lot of things from mythology for characteristics and characters in the book. There is actually a trough that's been carved through the Florida Keys, for example, in the Kraken books, like a path for these submarines to travel, because the water, if you know the Keys at all, isn't really deep enough for a large submarine. You'd have a lot of problems there. So I had it where they actually carved out this trough, make it deep enough and wide enough that these military submarines could travel to and from this base. And since the path this trough kind of winds its way along the sea bottom and such, very serpentine, it was called Jormungandr, like the Midgard serpent, let's say. But there's so many sightings out there that you look at, and it makes you wonder, are we not seeing these things because it was as much nowadays because it was people were imagining it, or what I believe is that in the days of sailing ships, when things were a lot quieter, obviously, you didn't have noisy, diesel engines and stuff propelling massive steel ships through the water. Wooden ships, sailing ships were much quieter and would probably at times even be interpreted to be another marine animal by some of these creatures. But you've got, historical sightings, let's say, of what people interpreted as sea serpents attacking whales, even sperm whales. But if you look at the witness sketches and the descriptions, it becomes obvious that these serpents that they're saying are wrapped around these whales, in reality, are enormous squid. Squid of sizes that would make them the largest known predator, or maybe even the largest life form on the planet. One sighting said the guy walked along, what was it? Hold on, I'm going to actually pull it up here if I can find it. A.G. Starkey off the Maldives in the Indian Ocean, World War II. And this sailor was on deck late at night, and I doesn't have it in this part I'm looking at, but I know for a fact he was checking on these lights that they had in the water, and these lights were some sort of submarine detector. I don't know if they used these lights on these cables underwater so they could see submarines passing by or what. It had to be something along those lines, but they had these underwater lights in the water. And these lights must have attracted this enormous squid, because I'm sure you guys know that squid can flash colors and things like that.
Right.
They can, especially when they're mating and things like that, and we're excited, just like cuttlefish. So I believe that, that these lights that they put in the water attracted this animal because it thought, oh, is this another squid? Is it mating season? That kind of thing. So this guy, I'll read his actual statement. He said, as I gazed fascinated A circle green light glowed in my area of illumination. This green, unwinking orb I suddenly realized was an eye. The surface of the water undulated with some strange disturbance. Gradually, I realized that I was gazing at almost point-blank range at a huge squid. And then Starkey went on to say he walked the length of the ship, and he found the tail at one end, the tentacles at the other, and the ship was over 175 feet long.
Wow.
So if you think about it, and that's without those long feeding tentacles that they shoot out.
Right.
So this squid, it must have seen, those, like I said, those lights, and it was like, hey, baby, how you doing? It comes up there, and it's like, no, it's not what I thought. And then, I read the rest of the piece. It swelled up, he said, and then it just silently just sped off, without it, and completely noiseless. They fill up with water, and then they just jet away. So, I mean, there are probably squid down there of ridiculous proportions. I mean, there was one that attacked in the 70s. It attacked I think it was a destroyer escort called the U.S. Stein. And if you've ever read that incident, this ship came out of, I don't remember the harbor, to be honest, but it was a naval destroyer escort, hundreds of feet long. It left its port. It went out to sea, and almost, I think, the very first day, all of a sudden their sonar stopped working. So they had to turn around, and they had to go back. I mean, that's their navigation, detecting enemy ships, things of that nature. They have what's called a sonar dome underneath the surface of the water of the bow of the ship. And the sonar dome, if you've seen one of these ships, is about, I'm going to say 15 or 20 feet across. It's kind of a big, giant oval shape, and it's covered with a rubberized protective coating, and this emits the ship's sonar. So when the ship went in the dry dock to find out what the problem was, they find the rubber coating of the sonar dome is badly lacerated, and they pull several squid claws out of it. Wow. That they said came from a squid 5 times larger than any known specimen. So I believe that the squid's natural enemy is the sperm whale, that this squid must have thought that a sperm whale big enough to actually attack it was passing over it, and of course it lashed out to defend itself and attacked the ship. It realized that this was not an edible object and was not a whale, and then it just broke off the assault, but left evidence of itself behind. So they're out there. You just, people don't report them because usually, I guess, if you're swimming and you encounter something like this, you don't get to come back and talk about it.
Do you think there are giant octopus out there the way there are giant squid?
Well, there is, I had one of my shows that we discussed octopuses, and I had a witness who, and this is only in 2014, I think. It was like 5 years ago. He was down in Florida off of Sanibel Island. I'm pulling this stuff out of my head, so forgive me if I'm not perfectly smooth on it. But he was on a 60-foot fishing yacht, and they were fishing a few miles off Sanibel Island. And as he was sitting there, at the railing, all of a sudden a 20-foot section of, it was 20 feet away. A 30-foot section of octopus tentacle broke the surface, came up, and it reached over and it started exploring the side of the boat he was on, touching it, feeling it, that type of thing. And he's just looking right at it. He described it as ranging from 2 to 3 feet in thickness. Now think about an octopus where you're not seeing the animal, you're only seeing a piece of its tentacle, 30 feet of it, and the thicker part of that 30 feet is a yard thick. That means that there's probably at least twice as much of that tentacle under the water because you can't see the animal, its mantle or anything, its body. But anyway, so it touched the ship, and then it just pulled down, and it just went back under, and nothing else happened. And he was telling me all about this because he thought all octopuses get that big. And I was like, no, all octopuses do not get that big. And it was a fantastical sighting on his part. And I think what happened is the boat he was on was about the size of a whale, once again. And with it being a fishing boat, obviously fishing boats are putting chum in the water, things like that. It smells like fish. And I think this animal came along and it was like, oh, a sleeping whale. This might be a good opportunity for me to grab a meal, But octopuses have chemoreceptors in their suction cups. They can actually taste with their tentacles. So when it came up and it touched that boat, it both was seeing what it was made out of and what it tasted like, and it realized it was an inedible object, and it obviously didn't molest it any further, and it went on its way. If it had felt or misinterpreted it as being a living object, thinking it was a whale, it might have enacted a scene from one of my novels and actually sprang on it, wrapped its arms around and stuff like that, and God forbid if it had come in contact with people, something really horrible might have happened. But, so, I mean, this guy saw with his own two eyes.
No, I wonder if, as I'm thinking about this, and like with the lights attracting it, or I wonder if anyone's gone out there and tried with using different lights, flashing them in the water, or using the trigger objects or what be it to try to attract these things, because we don't see a lot of these things because they're simply not in the space that we occupy. But there are so many deep parts of the ocean where things can hide and stuff. Unless they have a reason to come towards us, they're not going to.
Well, you touched on two interesting points. I mean, first, you're absolutely right. I believe only 5% of the ocean floor has been explored. And that does not include the average of, I think it's 12,000 feet depth in between that from top to bottom. So, I mean, we're on this tiny little crust of the planet, and the vertical space that's available for anything and everything there is virtually limitless. But the whole thing about the bioluminescence, that was actually done a couple years ago when they finally got the first live footage of a live giant squid. It wasn't a big squid. It was 5 meters long, like 16 or 17 feet. But they put a piece of bait down there, which was a different species of large squid, as bait, and they used different types of flashing lights, colors and stuff like that to sort of mimic bioluminescence, which is how most animals of the abyss hunt. If they don't have sonar, they attract prey by flashing, or they hunt things that flash. And they were actually able to get live footage of this squid that came up, and it started feeding on the dead squid right in front of the camera, and it was there for, 20 minutes, something like that. It didn't care that it was in the searchlights. It was looking right at them. It had this big bluish green eye and stuff. It was really interesting to see. Very calm animal. It didn't seem alarmed at all at the presence of the submersible that was looking at it, or the people that were staring at it through the glass or filming it, things of that nature. I guess they were lucky, though, that something 5 times the size didn't show up and say, hey, are you guys edible too, Start knocking. Hello?
This is an awesome discussion. And with that, it is time for our next commercial break. You are listening to Paraversal Universe, so we'll be right back with our guest for the next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back from our second commercial break. This is Paraversal Universe on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek. Before we get back to the show, we want to tell you all that we're on Twitter as the NWPS and MeWe as Paraversal Universe. Our liking group pages on Facebook are under various headings as well. Having said that, check out our Society's like page on Facebook, the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited, as well as Jennifer's like page, Jennifer Malek, Psychic Demonologist. Leave a like if you like what you see. We always appreciate it. And there are some Facebook group pages we want you to check out. The Ultimate Conspiracies group page is one. Lake Monstrosities is another. Feel free to join them both. We would love to see you there. Each network mentioned has a group and like page on Facebook as well, so check that out. And our guest has a couple pages too. When we bring them back on, we can. One of them is Max Hawthorne's Marine Mysteries. So that's a good one. I like that one. This segment is brought to you by the book Trail of the Sasquatch, A Shaman's Journey, by cryptozoologist and Iroquois shaman Don Young, who's also a member of the NWPS. Check out his Facebook group pages, Kindred Forest and Indigenous Americas. All right. Any comments for this week's show can be addressed in the live chat room. And let's get back to the show. I know we have a question.
Yes, we do. We actually have a question for you that was submitted from somebody in chat. And the question is, could the guest comment on the very real stories of fishermen getting pulled over the side off the coast of Mexico by Humboldt squid?
Is that a question for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Just making sure.
First of all, can I say quick? We are talking with Max Hawthorne. I just wanted to put that there because we didn't get to that. Just to let people know that are just tuning in. But anyways, yeah. So the question was,
could you comment on the very real stories of fishermen getting pulled over the side off of the coast of Mexico by Humboldt squid?
Okay. I mean, I've not read a lot of details on that, a lot of incidents, I'm sorry. I've seen some footage. I've seen a diver who was attacked. In fact, Humboldt squid are large squid. They get 6 feet, maybe a bit more, up to maybe 200 pounds at most, I think is the maximum. But they're fast moving. They are very aggressive, and they are pack hunters. So the problem with the squid is, even though its beak is only maybe 3-4 inches across, I mean, I have one in my collection, it can do a pretty nasty bite. And the thing is that when one of them attacks something, sometimes a bunch of them join in, and it is possible for them to drag under and kill a human being. I'm not aware of them reaching up over the side and pulling somebody into the water. I haven't read anything like that. I mean, I know Humboldts don't have the long feeding tentacles that shoot out like Architeuthis and some other squid have. They basically lunge at their prey with their shorter tentacles, which have hooks on them, latch on, and they just start tearing away. I mean, they've taken bites out of sharks. But in fact, I even featured them in the first book. But anyway, so I think sometimes fishermen may, if you put your hand in the water, you could certainly get grabbed and pulled in. Or if you hook one of these things that's very powerful and you get pulled over the side, you could find yourself in trouble. But I can't really comment beyond that except to say that they are dangerous animals. It's not something you want to mess with. It's not something you want to go swimming with, for sure. I mean, their name literally, they're called Diablos Rojas, I believe it is, which means like red devils. So they got that name for a reason.
Right. They're actually pretty vicious. My understanding is that everything you just said, you know, for sure. I mean, that'd be a nasty way to go too.
Which shows you, if you scale that up to an animal the size of one attacking a whale, you know, it's a horrifying thing. I mean, I have like in my files an incident, and this is actually fairly recent. Let me see if I can actually pull it up here, so I don't misinform. But I think this goes back about maybe 10 years ago at most. There was an incident where a guy had I think it was a trimaran, like one of those sailing yachts that has like 3 hulls on it, and it was about 110 feet long. This is in the early or mid 2000s, and he was racing it, and all of a sudden, boom, his vessel stopped, and it turned out he had been seized by a huge squid. Now this is recently, but and the squid was like latched onto one of the hulls. Trimaran has 3 separate hulls there, and was like tearing at it. He described it, I believe he said the body was about 25 feet long. I guess that was the mantle, and it had tentacles as thick as his thigh. That's a huge squid. I mean, stretched out, that animal would probably be, with the head, the mantle, tentacles that size, could be 100 feet long. But it may have interpreted those 3 hulls as being 3 finback whales swimming on the surface, and it decided it was going to make a meal out of one of them. You know, there wasn't a noisy engine to stop it or something like that, so it wasn't intimidated, let's say. But you know, the octopus thing, when I was telling you about, you know, the guy I spoke to who saw one off Sanibel Island, they reported that to the harbor master and the Coast Guard. And when they called it in, they were told, it's interesting because we just had a report of something similar like yesterday or something. And if your listeners Google like Sanibel Island monster, there's video footage out there of this girl and her boyfriend. They were on a boat filming off Sanibel Island, and they saw something huge, they said the size of a bus, swimming under the surface real quickly, and then it seemed to attack something. And they said they saw something like a telephone pole, like extend out from it and wrap around something, and then it broke the surface. And when you see it break the surface, you see like this curved hump, sort of like splash like that. The girl starts freaking out. She's screaming and terrified, and they kind of like pull away from it. But somebody I know thought it was a manatee just rolling on the surface. But I took the footage and I slowed it down, you know, frame by frame. And if you look, you actually see this hump-like thing, which is very slick, like meaning smooth. It curls up as it breaks the surface of the water. It seems to wrap around something, and then it starts to go under. And if you look on the left side of this curved piece, you see what looks like the tail of a seal, like it has like the fringe kind of like, you know, paddle. And then on the other side, you can actually see a seal's head break the surface of the water. You can even see the whiskers, and then it gets yanked under. So it's quite possible that this same animal comes there each year seasonally to feed on manatees, which would be an ideal meal for it. They're large, they're slow, they're practically defenseless, and it's a great source of protein. So they may have actually filmed the tentacle of an enormous octopus or something, you know, striking and seizing a pinniped and dragging it under before it ate it.
Wow, that's cool.
I mean, it's interesting footage to look at.
Animal, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite aquatic cryptid?
Aquatic cryptid? My favorite is actually lately the theory that extant mosasaurs still exist. And this came about because I think it was maybe a year or 2 ago, I got to interview a gentleman from the UK who, with the story that we ended up dubbing the Carnival Cruise Monster. And he used to work on one of the Carnival cruise lines. Up on deck, he was like a fitness instructor and such. And he was called over by a group of people over to this railing there, and they were asking him, they said, what is that animal down there? And 100 or 200 feet next to the ship, there was an enormous sea creature swimming along and keeping pace with the ship. Very nonchalantly, he said, not a care in the world. And he said it was gigantic. He described it as being so big that when its back broke the surface of the water, it looked like a submarine where the water streams off of it. And he said it had, he only saw less than half of it. He saw its head, neck, and like the shoulders. And that section he described as being at least 50 feet long. I mean, he said it was gigantic. The head he described as being like an enormous alligator or crocodiles. And he couldn't see it, you know, any fins or anything like that. It just seemed to be propelling itself along the water, keeping track with the ship. And the ship, I checked out their normal cruise speeds, is around 20 to 22 miles an hour. So So this animal was capable of moving at a decent clip, and it cruised along next there. He said it had smooth, blackish, skin, almost shiny, not glowing shiny, but slick looking, let's say, very streamlined. He said that it when it breathed, like when it came up for air, like the water all around it, there was a ton of bubbles, but it didn't blow like a whale. It didn't make that sound when a whale comes to the surface. Right. It was quiet. And but from his description, it sounded like an enormous mosasaur. So there are so many reports of mosasaur or mosasaur-like creatures. I mean, I could rattle off dozens of them to you that I have in front of me from all over the world, in New Zealand and all sorts of other places. And they range in size from, like, people say they saw something like 5 meters long to things as big as what he saw. So I guess that would be my favorite because I think it's most likely that they may still exist. I'm sure the Jurassic World guys would be happy about that.
I would hope so.
Imagine that in an aquarium.
We got a question?
Mm-mm.
No. So let's discuss Megalodon.
One of my favorite sharks of all time is Megalodon.
Jennifer loves Megalodon.
It is an icon. Or iconic.
So do you think it's still out there?
I mean, I've done a lot of research on Megalodon. A lot of Megalodon fans aren't happy with my research, to be honest, because of the fact that no, they aren't. Because I studied the teeth. I have like some huge shark teeth in my collection. In fact, I actually have teeth from the entire Megalodon lineage. Different species from that Kronos species moving forward.
That's cool.
I'll be doing a piece eventually. I have a huge Chubutensis tooth, and it actually has a bite mark in the tooth where it doesn't look like it was from the same shark from it feeding in the tooth. I mean, it looks like it might have either fought another shark or been preyed upon by another shark. You don't know, but you could see these serrated grooves cut into the tooth where something bit it. But anyway, so I was looking at like some of these Megalodon teeth, and I discovered that the teeth seemed like more than they needed to be, preternaturally thick, whereas its ancestors, even the ones that come close in size, are not like that. The teeth had these, especially the upper maxillary teeth in the center of the jaw. They have these thick column-like centers, and then the cusps, they kind of like radiate out into these blade-like flanges, let's say. And the more I studied it, the more I realized that these teeth, the serrations were so microscopic at that point. And it's not like they shrank because of the size of the tooth and they stayed the same size. Like I've compared different size Megalodon teeth from like a 3-inch tooth to a 5-inch tooth to a 6.5-inch tooth. The serrations actually shrink and increase in number as the shark gets bigger. So these teeth are basically hacksaws, and I realized that they were bone chisels. And then I spoke to how can I say this? Well, a professor who deals, a mechanical engineer who deals with underwater robotics and stuff, and discussed, how fast would a shark like this size be? And when you look at whale sharks and basking sharks, you see these animals swim incredibly slowly, 3, 4, 5 miles an hour at most. And it's not a matter of the fact that they feed on plankton, because the blue whale feeds on plankton, and it gets much bigger, but it can still swim at 30 miles an hour. And whale sharks and basking sharks have predators. They get preyed on by large great whites. They get preyed on by killer whales. So you would think that they would have a need for speed, I guess you'd say. But they're limited by their anatomy because their bones are made of cartilage. So when you have this cartilaginous skeleton, it limits first of how big you can get. I mean, you notice we don't have whale sharks as big as a blue whale. See, even the scientists have been touching on this lately. And the other fact is that the bones aren't as strong because they're made of cartilage. Like a friend of mine who is in Nova Scotia, he found a dead basking shark, on the beach, and he took a knife and he sliced right through the vertebrae, like very easily, almost like he was cutting through clay. But if you try that with a big whale bone, it's not going to work. So when you have an animal that size flexing that tail back and forth, you got the tendons and ligaments all connected to these cartilage vertebrae, they can only withstand so much stress. So the largest sizes, the bigger sharks, can't swim as quickly because they can't put as much pressure on their tails as they swim back and forth through the water. If they try to push faster, they would actually injure themselves. So they have to move slowly. Okay, that's just the way it is. And if you look at Deep Blue, that big great white shark, she has become a carrion specialist, more or less. You know, she swims along very slowly, and dolphins swim up and like peck at her, and she doesn't mess with them. And you saw that woman who free dived down and grabbed onto her fin for a ride, etc. You know, this shark is not as fast as, let's say, an 18-footer would be, or a 16-footer certainly, because of the fact it's so big and bulky. So the smaller megalodons, according to my research, were active predators. You know, when I say small, I mean 20, 25, even 30 feet. But once they got 40, 45, 50 feet or more, they started switching more and more to a diet of carrion. You know, either finding a whale carcass or stealing it from smaller megalodons and other sharks, etc. And their teeth kind of confirm this. The teeth are designed to slide between the ribs and then split the ribs apart and bite through them. And the reason they want to do that is because a lot of times these carcasses are stripped. There's not much left on them. But if you go through the rib cage, you still got the heart, the lungs, and so forth and so on. See? So they're not to take away from megalodon. You would not want to be in the water with one. It just seems to indicate, the evidence suggests very strongly, that the bigger they got, the more they focused more on eating dead things as opposed to being able to trying to chase down live things that they just couldn't catch anymore. So, that being said, should I answer the question now about them?
Yeah, but can we do that after our next commercial break?
Oh, sure. I don't really ramble so much.
It's okay. We don't mind.
That's what you're here for.
Right. You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We will be right back with our guest for the next segment.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Subaru, featuring the all-new 3-row Ascent, with seating for up to 8 and a choice of second-row captain's chairs. Love is now bigger than ever. Learn more at Subaru.com.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. The Trump administration is agreeing to lift tariffs on steel and aluminum imported from Canada and Mexico. NPR's Scott Horsley reports those tariffs had been a major source of friction between the U.S. and its neighbors.
Canada and Mexico are among the biggest suppliers of imported steel and aluminum to the U.S., and both countries responded to the protectionist measure with retaliatory tariffs of their own on U.S. exports. The Trump administration was under pressure to lift the tariffs as it tries to win congressional backing for a new North American free trade agreement. Trump spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who celebrated the decision with Canadian steelworkers. Tariffs remain in place on steel and aluminum imported from most other countries around the world. Domestic steel mills have boosted their output in the last year and are now running at more than 80% capacity, the administration's target when the tariffs took effect. Scott Horsley, NPR News, the White House.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin announced today he will not be meeting a congressional deadline to turn over 6 years' worth of President Trump's tax returns. The announcement all but guaranteeing a federal court battle. In a letter to the House Ways and Means Committee and Chairman Richard Neal, Mnuchin said we are unable to provide the requested information. Mnuchin reiterating the administration's position Neal lacks a legitimate legislative purpose for requesting the data. In a statement, Neal said given the Secretary's failure to comply, he's consulting with counsel on how to best enforce the subpoena moving forward. Trump administration officials are expected to brief Congress next week on what they say are more aggressive moves by Iran to go after U.S. troops or American allies in the Middle East. But as NPR's Tom Bowman explains, there's skepticism from lawmakers.
Senior officials tell NPR that Iranian leaders have instructed the Revolutionary Guard to use their proxies to attack U.S. forces and allies. And they point to satellite photos showing Iranian boats carrying missiles. Still, House Armed Services Chair Adam Smith says the administration so far has not revealed anything alarming about Iranian behavior. And he's worried that National Security Advisor John Bolton, who has advocated regime change, is pressing for military action against Iran. That worry is also shared by some Pentagon officials who are trying to calm the situation and convince the White House about the dangers of escalation. Tom Bowman, NPR News, Washington.
Democrats in the House have approved a sweeping anti-discrimination bill that would extend civil rights protections to LGBT people. The measure, called the Equality Act, would prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. The measure a top priority of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
This is not just an act of Congress that we are taking for the LGBT community, progress for the community. This is progress for America.
A similar measure in the Senate faces difficult odds. President Trump is expected to veto the bill if it reaches his desk. Stocks lost ground at week's end. The Dow closed down 98 points. You're listening to NPR. Cross-party talks aimed at salvaging a compromise Brexit deal appear to have broken down with no agreement. Britain's opposition Labour Party saying talks with Prime Minister Theresa May's government have gone as far as they can. The two sides have been in negotiations for weeks but can't agree on terms for an exit plan from the European Union that would win support from Parliament. The talks began after lawmakers rejected May's proposed divorce deal with the EU 3 times. Smart Clothing is hoping to get in on the $42 billion wearable technology market that so far mostly consists of smart watches and fitness bands. NPR's Ping Wong reports.
Smart clothing hasn't reached the market yet, but researchers say it's coming. In the journal Science Advances, engineers at UC San Diego say they're one step closer to making clothes that regulate body temperature. They've made a small thermoelectric patch that heats and cools your skin by turning temperature differences into electrical energy, says Run Quinton, a study author.
The biggest dream would be like we have individualized air conditioning systems or thermal envelopes so we can carry around so we can always feel very comfortable under all kind of activities like outdoor sports or like construction workers or in indoor office space.
It will take at least a few years to turn the technology into actual clothing and make it washable and cost-effective. Ping Huang, NPR News.
Author Herman Wouk, whose work includes The Winds of War, War and Remembrance, and the Caine Mutiny, has died at his home in Palm Springs, California. Wouk won the Pulitzer Prize for the Caine Mutiny in 1952. Herman Wouk was 103 years old. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from halftime. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Also heard on the Rift Radio Network out of Virginia, WCET-FM out of South Carolina, and High Point Radio out of New Jersey. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek, coming to you from northern Wisconsin here at the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center in Rhinelander. You can always enjoy excellent talk fringe radio for awesome and informative radio shows about the paranormal, supernatural, esoteric, and Fortean topics on this network and affiliate platform websites. Not only our show, but many other good shows about different facets of the unknown and unexplained. Much to listen to and much to enjoy. So check that out. Stream live on TuneIn, iTunes, and the Paranormal Livestream app, available from Android app and the iTunes Store. This segment is brought to you by the Supernatural magazine, where our articles can be read. All right, back to Paraversal Universe. We are talking to the author of the best-selling book series Kronos Rising, Mr. Max Hawthorne. Max, are you still with us?
Yeah, I absolutely am, Kevin. Thank you so much. So we were discussing Megalodon, and I kind of digressed a bit in terms of theories and stuff like that. But I think that the real question of whether the animal's still around has to do with what causes its extinction. One of the prevailing theories that's getting stronger and stronger out there is the fact that whales started getting larger and larger, and as they did, it became more difficult for it to prey upon. It was designed and used to preying on smaller whales like Cedotherium that were like 20, 25, maybe 30 feet long at most. And the bigger the whales got, the bigger it was a problem. I think that if you have an animal that preys on carrion a lot as an adult, and the smaller versions of it prey on these smaller whales, it makes it doubly vulnerable to extinction. Meaning that if those smaller whales die off, now you don't have anything for the young megalodons to hunt and kill and eat, and then you don't have any carrion as a result for the larger brood stock, we'll call it, to feed upon and eat. So that being said, there's been a lot of mass extinctions that have wiped out a lot of cetaceans. I don't think Megalodon, per se, is still alive, but I'm 100% convinced that there is a very large macropredatory shark still roaming our oceans. And there's evidence, to this effect. Shall I illuminate?
Shall.
Sure.
Okay, just making sure. So the first is everybody's seen the picture of that pygmy blue blue whale. My God, that was I think it was like 69 feet long. That has like a 4-foot bite taken out of its peduncle, the back of the tail region, which is where a large shark would strike to try and immobilize an animal like that. You don't want to deal with the business end if it has teeth, and you don't want to be necessarily where the flukes are, because that's, you can get suffer a devastating blow that could kill you. So they want to take out the whale if possible and hit it where above the tail, where if it can wound it badly enough, especially damage the spine, then the whale can't swim. The whale can't swim. It's easy prey. It's just a matter of time at that point. That's why elephant seals come up behind, great whites come up behind elephant seals and they bite them in the tail region and cripple them that way, and then they wait for them to bleed out. So in this case, they figured that, the shark that attacked this blue whale was pushing 40 feet in length. So we have evidence, you can see tooth marks on that there is a shark that size out there. A marine biologist I know who dives with some of the biggest whale sharks in the world, I think this was 2 years ago in 2017, and I have the photos and such. He was taking pictures, him and his crew, of a 40-foot whale shark. That's a big whale shark. Yeah, 40 feet long, no exaggerating. And they saw that it had a huge bite scar on its left flank, also in the same region near where the blue whale was bitten. And I mapped it out based on the size of the shark, and the scar indicated a bite of similar size, approximately 4 feet across. Now, some people look at this and they say, well, it's an old bite, and the scar stretched. It was bit when it was younger, and the scar doubled or tripled in size.
Right.
Well, that's nonsense. And the reason I say that is one of the photos is a real close-up. And if you look at the close-up, you can see individual tooth puncture marks where it struck this whale shark. Individual, like spike-like triangles of flesh that was excised. Now, when you see this, it tells you two things. The first thing is that bite is only a few months old, let's say, because I've researched whale sharks that have been struck by great whites and tiger sharks, and if you look at how their bite heals, the damage, it heals so quickly that in a year, it's not even recognizable almost as a bite anymore. They're so regenerative. Dorsal fins will fill back in where a big bite was taken out. The wounds close up on the side. You can't even tell hardly that it was biting more. This is an actual tooth impressions are still there. So this is not a 2, 3, 5-year-old bite or something like that. This bite was relatively recent when it was photographed. The other thing is the teeth are so triangular, they're more like the teeth of a giant great white than a megalodon. They don't have megalodon's teeth are more a little curved, let's say, on the outer edge of the crown. They're not as straight as the great whites in terms of where the serrations are. So the shark that bit this whale shark was probably as big as it in the 40-foot range. And the question is now, what is it? Some scientists, marine biologists, believe that there is either a mutated version of a great white out there, a subspecies, a white shark that just, maybe they get so big over time that this is possible. The other possibility is that one of Megalodon's ancestors, in fact, one that it shared the seas with for millions and millions of years, that animal may still be lingering around. And that would be Cercaricles, I can't even talk today, Cercaricles trabutensis. This shark got to be 40 feet in length. It had teeth very similar to Megalodon's, but they're more triangular in shape. So if you look at that bite mark, it's quite possible that we have a Megalodon ancestor still prowling around and hunting.
That's really interesting.
That is very interesting.
So we have the King of Plesiosaurs is in chat. He says, ask Max about the super predator. Do you know what he's talking about?
Well, the super predator is a story that goes back, I don't know if it's 10 or more years ago now, but it might be 15 years ago. I think it was 2004, but don't quote me. In the Bremer Canyon off the coast of Australia, there was a tagged 3 meter, so we'll call it pushing 10-foot great white shark, a female great white shark they dubbed Shark Alpha because of her boldness and aggressiveness. And Shark Alpha had been tagged. She had a tag in her dorsal, and the tag washed up far earlier than it should have. These tags are satellite tags, and they eventually, the connection corrodes and they break free and they float to the surface, and then they can track them by satellite. Well, this tag washed ashore very prematurely, and when they checked the date on it, the first thing they noticed was that the tag had been apparently exposed to stomach acid. And the second thing they noticed was when they looked at the satellite tracking movements of the shark, she had been swimming along, and all of a sudden she had dove deep, almost like 2,000 feet straight down, and then stopped. And then her temperature, or really the temperature of the surrounding water, went from 40 degrees to 78 degrees within seconds. And it stayed at 78 degrees for the next, I think it was 8 days, if memory serves, at which point the tag's temperature became that of the surrounding seawater and it washed ashore. So what they deduced is that some sort of animal, calling it the super predator, ate shark alpha, this 3-meter white shark. The 78-degree temperature indicates the temperature of its stomach. It took 8 days to digest shark alpha, and then it, obviously it excreted the tag. So that's basically the topic of the super predator, and there's been a lot of theories put forth as to what the super predator might be. I mean, people thought initially there was several documentaries. They said it was a 16-foot great white. I wasn't buying that one, to be honest, because the first thing is that I don't think a 16-foot great white could catch a 9-foot great white because of the fact that they're more nimble and faster at smaller speeds. The second thing is that they said, the temperature of the great white was, the internal temperature was 78 degrees. And they tested this because a 16-foot great white came to the surface, and they pointed a thermal scanner at it and pulled the trigger, and they got 78 degrees. I thought that was balderdash, I'm going to speak bluntly, because number one, you've got a shark rolling, just barely breaking the surface of the water, soaked with cold seawater. Okay, its skin is visible, just its skin, for seconds, if that. Okay, and somehow you're able to go through that skin, soaked cold skin, and get the core temperature of the shark. The stomach is 78 degrees. It's physically impossible. So I think this was just like a fluff piece or a way to just kind of, people were so excited about this thing, they just wanted to shut it down and say, it's just a bigger great white shark. I thought that was nonsense. Then another special came out, and they were trying to say that it was a megalodon, and a megalodon had come up from the abyss and had grabbed the, shark alpha, and it pulled her down and ate her, and so forth and so on. And that didn't make any sense either, because the first thing is that when she was attacked, she was high up in the water column. Okay, so let's just say that the megalodon had come up from the abyss to feed on her and then brought her back down. Okay, the tag shows that she went down at high speed and was eaten and then came back up. And she stayed near the surface, from the surface to 300 feet of water for the next 8 days. So if you're a megalodon that lives in the abyss and you come up and make a kill and go back down, which is supposedly what the evidence indicated, then why are you loitering at the surface for the next 8 days? You see? So that didn't make any sense either, not to mention the fact that the body temperature didn't match, the digestive, a shark takes a day, 2 days at most to digest its food. This was a slow metabolism. It was a steady body temperature of 78 degrees. None of the evidence backed any kind of shark. So then you look at all these different options. Is it a squid? No. Is it an octopus? No. They're both the temperature of the surrounding water. They're cold-blooded animals. And their beaks would have shredded the tracker as well as the shark, and it would have been destroyed. You need something to swallow this thing whole. So what are we looking at? Sperm whale? No. Orca? No. They both have body temperatures same as yours and mine. So 78 degrees versus 98 doesn't work. See? It was something that could stay near, there was an air breather. They said the behavior was similar to that of an orca, staying from the surface to about 300 feet for the next 8 days, and probably stays in that same range ongoing. It's just that it excreted the tag, and they no longer could track its movements. See? So different theories have been put out. I came of the opinion that, based on the body temperature, that this animal had to be some sort of reptile. And I say that because I was looking around, I thought, well, pliosaur, I wish. Mosasaur, possibly. But then research came out a couple years ago that showed that mosasaurs had a body temperature similar to a mammal, like almost like bird temperatures, 98, 99 degrees. So a mosasaur was out also. And the only thing I could come up with that matched the temperature, actually, was the leatherback sea turtle. And the temperature of the water temperature was exactly 46 degrees. I remember it. And when I looked it up, leatherbacks were able to maintain a temperature up to 32 degrees higher than the surrounding water based on their physiology. So if you took 46-degree water temperature and you added 32 degrees to it, you got the exact 78-degree stomach temperature of the super predator. But leatherback turtles do not eat great white sharks. If anything, it's the other way around. See? So since we're talking cryptozoology, cryptozoological creatures here, you're like, okay, well, is there a turtle out there that could, chase down and eat, a 9-foot great white shark? And are you guys familiar with the Gary LaMotta sighting from the 70s?
No.
Yeah, but we will cover that as soon as we come back from our next commercial break. You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We will be right back with our guest for the next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting, also heard on WCET-FM and affiliates, and on the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek. Before we get back to the show, let's take a quick moment to specifically mention the radio call dials for the AM/FM terrestrial radio stations who carry Paraversal Universe, including WCET, which is located on 101.7 FM out of Columbia, South Carolina, and then High Point Radio, which can be found on 100.5 FM and 1620 AM out of New Jersey, which broadcast in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Hello to all of you who are tuning in on the airwaves. Thank you so much, and we are glad you are with us. This segment is brought to you by the Parasociology like page on Facebook. Parasociology is the study of how paranormal manifestations and experiences can affect a family, group, or collective. Parasociology also examines how spirituality is practiced in different cultures. So go check that out and leave a like for future content. Alrighty, back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are talking to aquatic cryptozoologist and marine mysteries researcher Max Hawthorne, author of Kronos Rising. You still with us, Max?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So basically, we were talking about the super predator, this mysterious thing that consumed the 3-meter great white shark off the coast of Australia years back. And when I was doing research on this, it seemed like really difficult to try and pin down what kind of animal would have preyed on a great white shark. By the body temperature and the digestive tract and all this other information, the only animal that seemed to make sense was a leatherback turtle. And interestingly, a leatherback also has a digestive system that's many times longer than even other sea turtles. So all that seemed to go together. But, leatherbacks eat jellyfish, and they don't get big enough to attack a shark, let alone consume one or swallow it whole. But I looked at a report from back in 1969 where a fisherman by the name of Gary LaMotta spotted, let me see if I can find exactly where all this took place. So Gary LaMotta, I believe it was off the coast of Newfoundland, but he saw and filmed a enormous turtle that he described as having no shell, being 38 feet long, capable of, quote, terrific speed. And he actually shot this thing with not shot physically like with a gun, with a Super 8 camera, which was in 69, I guess was pretty much state of the art for the general public. Now, I never thought too much of the footage, to be honest. It's dark, it's grainy. You see some object like bobbing up and down the water. You can see it sort of like suspending, and it's sort of holding position, et cetera. But, when I looked into this more and more, and I saw other reports of huge turtles like this, I thought, well, maybe he saw something, maybe not. I took some frames from the Gary LaMotta footage, and I enhanced them. I didn't do anything to them to change them or like that. I lightened them, I enhanced them, I increased the contrast, et cetera. And as soon as I did that, the thing that was sticking out of the water, which I had for one point thought was a flipper, it turned out to be a head. And it was the head of a ginormous turtle. I mean, you can see it. You can see the eyes. You can see the wrinkles under the eyes. You can see the shape of the beak. You can see the wattles under the neck, the wrinkles and stuff like this. It's literally an enormous turtle. So what Gary reported was indeed a 38-foot long turtle. Now that's a ginormous turtle. Even if it had a narrow frame, it would weigh 20, 30 tons. Enormous. And so you look at this thing and you say, like, okay, now you've got something big enough to actually have a turtle that could hunt down and chase down, this shark. And when he said it was fast moving, incredible speed, as he put it, I mean, it would take a turtle that could swim very fast to chase down a shark, which would probably be able to hit 30 miles an hour. And it's not impossible because regular-sized leatherbacks can top out at 22 miles an hour. So if you had a turtle of enormous size that was much more streamlined, it would be capable of speed like that. So my personal theory, and I've had pieces put out about this and stuff, even a press release, is that I believe that the animal that hunted down and chased down and caught Alpha and consumed her was some sort of 35 or 40-foot turtle. It sounds crazy.
No, but you're following the evidence.
Yeah.
You're going where the evidence is leading you, and
Yes.
that's what a quality researcher does.
Well, when you see the Super Predator show, an interesting thing was when they were looking for this thing, at one point they got a sonar reading deep under their boat, a couple hundred feet down, and they described it as being like around 35 feet long and moving very slowly. But they said, oh, it must be a whale. But now think about it. That's the size range. It was the same time of year. It was the same waters. That could perfectly well have been their super predator. Turtles, when they're swimming underwater, unless they're attacking something or running from something, they're not moving fast, right? You ever see a sea turtle mosey along? It's like the most laid-back guy in the world. He's like, hey, yo, dude, So they may well have had a sonar hit on this animal. All the evidence that I can find, there's nothing that points away from it. And since Gary's footage, to me is confirmed as having been this giant turtle, this species does exist. So the question is it a piscivore, one that feeds on fish or not? And if it is, I think that's your baby. That is the super predator.
I want to get back to turtles in a sec, but we have a question.
We have a question for you from the chat room. Just out of curiosity, what do you think of the Nadan Harbor carcass and the creature filmed swimming in the same area?
The what harbor carcass? How's it spelled?
Nadan.
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Hey, no, I'm not either. So
rumors of my omniscience have now been put to rest. Okay.
But anyways, we have monster snappers here in Wisconsin, which are legendary. The old timers used to talk about how the snapping turtles in the Powell Marsh, which is the largest marsh swamp in Wisconsin, would get as big as a coffee table, and they could snip your wrist off without a second thought. We know that there are alligator snapping turtles, which are the bigger version of the snapping turtle, that live deep and they're normally you're not going to see them, So to me, it's totally plausible that there would be a bigger turtle than we may know about that's deeper that, for whatever reason, we just haven't come across yet.
Well, there's been innumerable reports of monstrous turtles. I personally saw a dead loggerhead off the coast of New York, about 20 miles at sea. And this turtle was upside down, drifting, dead. I don't know if it was a ship strike, God forbid, or if it was just incredibly old. We saw it. We stopped because we wanted to see if sharks were tearing at the carcass, because we were shark fishing, and if they were, we were going to start fishing right there. But this turtle, its body was 3 feet thick. So, you can imagine the size of the shell. It was a huge turtle. It was the size of a car altogether.
Wow.
Like a Volkswagen, not a huge car, but the size of, let's say, definitely as big as a Beetle. Let's put it that way. It was a big turtle, much bigger than the accepted world record. I think the world record for a loggerhead is like 1,200 pounds or something like that. This thing would have been twice that, maybe, something like that. It was just, 3 feet thick. I was looking right at it, But at the time, and this is many years ago, I wasn't aware of how big sea turtles were, kind of like, the guy I told you about who thought all octopuses had, arms 3 feet thick and 30 feet long, bigger. But I thought, okay, well, that's how big a sea turtle is. Wow, that's a big turtle. And, we went on our way eventually. But, I've personally seen turtles that, a loggerhead that dwarf the world record for that species, a turtle, I'm sorry. But, it's like these animals, the only thing that stops it, you think about a turtle that size, the question is how does it reproduce? There's that question, because turtles, as we know, come ashore to lay their eggs. I don't think a turtle that pushing 40 feet in length would be able to drag itself ashore. And if it did, then the question would be, why wouldn't people have found the nest, found the eggs, seen the hatchlings, all this stuff? If it's physically unable to come ashore because of its sheer mass, which is most likely, it must have adapted to give birth to live young, like mosasaurs did, and plesiosaurs did, and pliosaurs did, et cetera. It must be just, giving birth to live young out at sea. And I don't think that's too big of a stretch, to be honest. It's, one minor factor. But
if we're going to talk about if we're going to talk about turtles, we got to bring up the kappas, right? The turtle people of Japan. Are you familiar with that?
No, but I'm all ears.
Okay, well, the kappa are basically what I just described, turtle, like a turtle on two legs, two arms. It's spelled Kappa. Look it up, check it out. It's cool stuff. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, let's see what time we got. Okay, is well, there's a few things I wanted to ask you, but one, just get your thoughts on the whole Fukushima deal and the nuclear pollution in the ocean.
Like my general take on it, or only more specific?
Well, I guess. Well, we can get more specific. Do you think that can alter physiology or structure in animals? And because we always hear about the sci-fi movies where something gets exposed to radiation, and now it's like the size of a skyscraper, right? I mean, I know that's exaggerating, but I don't know. I didn't know. I figured I'd just throw that out there and see if you had anything.
Yeah, I think that incident is a horrifying incident, and I mean, I know there's been reports of damaged, mutated, let's say, marine life with tumors and things of that nature. At the same time, if you look at the Wells catfish that live in Russia, where their nuclear accident took place, those catfish are big and healthy and aren't showing any signs of mutation at all. So right. I don't know how to, look at that. I mean, I think that the radiation can't help us any, and obviously it could poison the food supply and the food chain, et cetera. I don't expect some, Gojira-sized, creature to start stomping ashore and, asking me when my next book is coming out. Unless it was one of my readers, in a costume and all that stuff. But, so, yeah, I mean, it's a tragedy. I don't know how the long-term effects are, but hopefully it's being dealt with appropriately. It's not something that I focused on. I am looking at this Kappa thing. It seems to be related to giant soft-shell turtles, which is another crime because the world's largest freshwater turtle is almost extinct because of us, effectively. But, when you were talking about the snapping turtles, and I just want to throw this out there, ever since I could walk, my father has told this story how I think I was 2 years old at the time, and in Danbury, Connecticut, they were doing construction, and this large pond had been drained to make way for housing. And he swears on a stack of Bibles that he saw a common snapping turtle that had been like the apex predator of this 200-foot pond, had been forced out of its home, and it was walking down the side of the road. He actually stopped and looked at it, and he didn't want to get too close. It was very angry. And he described this turtle as being the size of a Galapagos tortoise, which kind of goes with what you were saying, the size of a coffee table. He estimated its weight between 250 and 350 pounds. He said the shell had to be 13 inches thick, in height, vertical height. I mean, that's gigantic. So, I know somebody an eyewitness who saw a turtle the size of the one you're talking about, and just walking down the road all angry, looking for a new home.
When I was a kid, my dad used to tell me the stories that he heard when he was a kid growing up in Springstead, Wisconsin, which is, has no size at all, it's just a little dot on the map, maybe a couple hundred people. And so it's very isolated. Anyways, at Powell Marsh, the old timers from when my dad was a kid would come in the tavern and talk about it. And that's where the stories came from. The old timers that actually came across these monstrous snapping turtles in the swamp. Pretty cool. I don't know if they get that big still, or I know times change and things change, but I believe it's possible. I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, as long as the Powell Marsh, no one's developing there. So, it's virtually untouched aside from pollution.
I catch them fishing all the time. Like if I'm bait fishing, I end up several times a season at least catching some gigantic snapping turtle. But they're not, like enormous, 40, 50 pounds. a very unpleasant animal. I mean, especially when you're trying to get the hook out of its mouth. But, I mean, an alligator snapper, I think they've gone up to 275 pounds. So, I mean, anything's possible.
Do you believe in...
Not big enough to eat a great white shark, though. I'm sorry.
How about merfolk? Mermaids, mermen, the aqua ape theory, or perhaps even genetic altering from perhaps,
I never really looked into it. I will say this: I saw that mockumentary that was put out. Was it Discovery Channel that did that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Mermaids, whatever. And at first, I thought it was real. I'm sitting there, when they're showing these cave drawings and stuff like that, and I'm telling my wife, look at this. Look at the skull, and then you see, and you're like, like I saw the phone footage and stuff. I knew there was a problem, But so that really left a bad taste in my mouth. But I've never really got into the whole merfolk thing per se. And that's not to say that anything is possible. The ocean's being limitless. It's possible. It could even be probable. I have a sort of man reptile semi-aquatic creature in my books, my series right now that's been mutated courtesy of the Cretaceous cancer we were talking about, those pathogens, etc. So I've been exploring the topic, but my character is more like a steroid version of the gill man or something like that, the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Well, people, not many, but we were talking with Scott Mardis about done the same kind of things. They almost look like the creature from the Black Lagoon kind of thing. And, again, to me, if it's plausible, then it's possible, and I'll keep an open mind to it.
Oh yeah, I don't mock anything except the Discovery Channel's mockumentaries and stuff. But, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon is an iconic movie. I've actually hung out with him, Riku Browning, who played the creature in all three of the movies, the underwater scenes.
Oh, really?
I hung out with him. I was at a book signing, and he and I were hanging together. He was a great guy.
Cool.
I was really happy.
Yeah, that's really cool. Oh shoot, what was I just gonna say?
Merfolk.
Oh yeah, just the mockumentary. When I learned that the stuff they had presented, like you said, the cave stuff, that was all fake. That was all fake, and and like you with the phone footage, it's like you just kind of question it, I almost, part of me wonders if they didn't make it and have it, be taken as a mockumentary just so that people kind of blow it off. You know what I'm saying? When there could be something to some of that.
Yeah, like saying that there was a 16-foot great white shark that chased down an 8 to 10-foot great white shark. I agree 100%. It's certainly plausible misdirection, so to speak.
Yeah.
People don't want the general populace, the powers that be, let's say, don't want the general populace worrying that there's, some sort of monstrous turtle that eats sharks that a human being might be a snack for also. They don't want people worrying about, what else is out there, et cetera. They want you going to work and paying your taxes. Don't ask, don't question, and vote for me on election day.
We need to take a commercial break.
All right. It is time for our commercial break. You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We will be right back with our guest for the next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Alrighty, we're back, everyone. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek. We're glad you are with us, as always. So we still have the T-shirt for the logo for Lake Monstrosities for purchase. Half the proceeds go to charity. And the specific cause to help 8-year-old Daniel D. Meza, who suffers from Dravet syndrome and seizures on a regular basis. Lake Monstrosities is the largest social media group outlet dedicated to aquatic mysteries and wonders of all kinds. So you can find those shirts there on Facebook. Type in Lake Monstrosities. There is a group and a like page. It's a great group, great artwork, great shirt for a great cause. And I will be this weekend sending the orders to the printer. So we're going to have these printed up this week, this coming up week. So if you want to get your shirts, now's the time to send them in.
And thank you to all those who have placed orders for this cause. And
your patience for waiting, because we appreciate that very much. So, anyways, this segment is brought to you by the 5-star Reader's Choice Award winning epic fantasy trilogy Helm by Robert L. Malek. And back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we're speaking with paleo author Max Hawthorne. You still with us, Max?
Absolutely, Kevin.
Okay, so during the break, we had a question come in for you for the chat room, and the question was, what are your thoughts on what relict species you believe most likely inhabit our lakes and oceans and are described or witnessed as sea or lake monsters?
Okay, that's a big question. I mean, we're talking about a lot of sightings, a lot of cryptids, potential species, a lot of bodies of water. I would start with the ocean one first, the marine environments first off. Based on the sightings, historical records, etc., I'm a firm believer that we have enormous octopuses out there. I mean, they've been off Hawaii, for example, they've been spotted so many times. I know that there's many sightings of enormous squid. So I would say, first off, you're going to have gigantic octopuses, enormous squid out there. That's a given. We've been talking about sea turtles. I think there's a gigantic species of sea turtle out there. We probably have a 40-foot macropredatory shark still swimming around. So a lot of these things that have been reported many times, in my opinion, do exist. Okay, I think a lot of sea serpent sightings are squid tentacles, attacks by squid on whales, which have been documented, calves and even adults, etc. So there's a lot of that out there, but that's kind of a given. When you get into fresh water, you're dealing with a more restrictive environment, unless you have access to the sea. It's a smaller body of water. It's easier to see what's in there, what's not in there, et cetera. And of course, you're limited in terms of like the time period, how old that body of water is. If you're dealing with the oceans, you can go all the way back to the Jurassic or earlier, potentially. So if we have species specifically, I think that there are probably very large freshwater turtles that have not been seen. I think that some sightings in Loch Ness, for example, and other places, some, not all, may well be very, very large Wells catfish. The Wells catfish is reported to be up to 5 meters in length. They have this huge head, this elongated body, and they're very sinuous, almost serpentine looking. So if somebody was in a boat, let's say, and a 12-foot Wells catfish came by and all you saw was the head and part of the body, that would look like the neck of a plesiosaur or something like that, or the head and neck, the openings of a gigantic serpent or something like that. So something I haven't discussed before but has bearing on this is some Loch Ness sightings, for example, people talk about they saw the creature leaving the loch or heading to the loch. There's been reports of that, and people have seen these like large trails, compressed areas in mud and things like that, that they said looks like an eel went there. again, that would sound like a giant Wells catfish. And I mean, we've probably all seen footage of Wells catfish coming into the shallows, practically beaching themselves like orcas do, lunging out and grabbing pigeons. Have you seen that footage?
I have not.
Oh, but they do that. I mean, it's a documented fact. Wells catfish will, prey on pigeons and other birds. They will come into the shallows and they will actually spring out of the water and grab a bird and take it in to eat it.
I could totally see that.
Yeah. So I've seen catfish when it rains and the water overflows the banks of ponds and things like that. They will actually squirm into the shallows to explore, to hunt, etc. Maybe stranded there if the waters recede, and they may have to work their way back. So it's quite possible that a gigantic Wells catfish that weighs 600 pounds could be squirming its way back in a Loch Ness, could look like some sort of pinniped or something else like that. That's not to negate all the sightings or anything like that. But this fish is enormous. It's dark looking. It's serpent-like. It does have potential for that. I think that there are probably landlocked species of enormous sturgeon that have not been documented yet. Maybe new species, maybe the white sturgeon, maybe belugas or some sort of side, like a runoff of those, let's say. And sturgeon get enormous. Some of them could push 20 feet in length. It's like this is a prehistoric fish that goes back with the sharks. So a lot of lake monster sightings that you see, like in Alaska, I think it's in Iliamna or something, they may be gigantic, undocumented sturgeon. And you have to think about, is it an air breather or not? If it's rarely seen, then it's not coming to the surface often. The fact that it can breathe water makes it more and more likely. But, there's been so many sightings of so many things out there, and I don't know everything, obviously, rumors to the contrary. But, I think that you have to look at what you have in the environment, what could be there, what could not be there, and then extrapolate from there.
You're familiar with Sandra Monsi's champ photo?
Sandra Mann.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it.
Any thoughts on champ?
Well, I know Scott Martis has, told me about his sighting, what he described, a huge hump-like object, which he only saw part of an animal that was the color of like a dark, like green or black garbage bag. Some people have said the Mansi photo was a, uprooted tree, like drifting and a branch and that type of thing, and that may or may not be the case. But I think that when you come to champ, you have the same type of situation. You may be dealing with, well, first I'm going to discredit one champ footage, I'm sorry to say, right away. And I'm not here to debunk things, but there's one piece of footage out there, the one where the guy said they saw this thing swimming along, and then you see it next to the boat, and people have said like that's like the head and neck or something like that, or the fins. Are you guys familiar with this image?
I know.
I looked at the footage, and I seen it move, and that is definitely a pike. If you watch it, you see it open its mouth. Okay, you can actually see it. That is a large pike. Okay, it could be mating season. They travel sometimes in groups, males pursuing females, etc. They do that a lot. The females are larger than the males, but that particular footage is 100% a northern pike or muskellunge, depending. It's a little grainy, but that's not to say that there could be some sort of cetacean in there. I'd be leery to say that. People said they've heard sonar and things like that, but a cetacean breathes air regularly. You would think that, and it's loud when it surfaces, that type thing. So spouting, you'd think that people would see that a lot more. I'd be more inclined to think that champ might be some sort of huge fish, sturgeon, eel, something along those lines, something that breathes water. I'd love for it to be a plesiosaur or a plesiosaur type creature, but it doesn't seem as likely. But I don't know. I'm going to have to go up there one of these days and actually fish for the thing myself.
Yeah, I think that you guys should do that an expedition. I definitely do. I could see you.
I'll do it. I'll bring shark gear. Gear that's designed to handle something that weighs 1,000 or 2,000 pounds, and put out the appropriate bait and all that, and let the chips fall where they may. And if we have a boat that's too small and starts getting towed by something that comes to the surface and is very angry, my writing career may be curtailed all of a sudden. But wait, Scott's bigger than I am. If I just push him over the side, that might slow it down. Don't eat me. Look, he's much juicier than I am. Just kidding. I would never do such a thing.
Right. We have come to the end of the show. Could you share your links quick with everyone where people can find you, all that?
Oh, sure. My author's website is maxhawthorne.com. Name MAX Hawthorne with an E on the end.com, or they can just put kronosrising.com, Kronos with a K. On social media, I mainly just do, for the most part, a little bit Twitter, but usually you find me on Facebook. My main fan page is the Max Hawthorne's Kronos Rising novel series, which is a pretty popular page. And the one you mentioned, Max Hawthorne's Marine Mysteries, is a nice group to check out as well. Love to have people. They're always welcome, and I always enjoy talking to the readers.
Awesome. Well, we'd like to thank aquatic cryptozoologist and author Max Hawthorne for being such an awesome guest. Really enjoyed the show very much.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it was my honor and privilege to be here, guys. I appreciate you putting up with me. I ramble.
Oh, no, not at all. Awesome stuff.
Yes.
Awesome stuff. Next Friday, we have the boys from This Uncanny Earth coming to discuss the mysteries behind Nikola Tesla. So don't miss that. Feel free to support any of the networks mentioned here tonight, as well as the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited, 501c3 nonprofit organization, by donating. It's folks like you who ensure that these excellent organizations and networks will be here tomorrow. To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming.
And to the skeptic, there will never be enough.
Thank you. Good night. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you here next time.
Good night, everyone.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.